The following interview is sponsored by First Phosphate. Always do your own due diligence before making any investment decision. Hello, everybody, and welcome into Commodity Culture. Today is August 17th, 2026, and my guest is the CEO of First Phosphate, a mineral exploration and development and clean technology company dedicated to building and reshoring a vertically integrated mine-to-market supply chain for the production of LFP batteries in North America. It's John Passalacqua. Great to have you back on the show.
Yeah, great to be here, Jesse.
Now, I had our friend Johnny Kovacevic on the show recently. He's very bullish on First Phosphate and the phosphate market in general. He said something interesting about the different kinds of phosphate out there and why igneous phosphate is the superior version of the mineral. Of course, that's what First Phosphate is involved with. Can you break that down further for us and explain igneous versus other phosphate varieties?
Yeah, so Jesse, basically, the igneous phosphate is about 5% of the world's known phosphate reserves, whereas sedimentary phosphate is 95% of the world's reserves. So igneous phosphate is very pure. It's found in lava rock, and it needs to be separated. It can be separated quite easily, at least ours can. We pull out the magnetite and the ilmenite, and we come out with a very pure phosphate concentrate, about 40% pure P2O5. That's a measure of phosphate. Whereas with sedimentary rocks, those are phosphates that are collected at the bottom of old seabeds and lakes and other forms of collection. And so basically, they have a lot of cadmium, uranium, thorium in with them. And so a lot of heavy metals. So they're hard to purify down to really ultimate purity. They can be purified once, and then you could reuse that phosphate on agricultural fields. It's not a big deal because it just washes out, so you can have the impurities in there. But to then move that up to purified phosphoric acid, only a certain portion of that can be moved up to purified phosphoric acid, maybe 10, 20, 30% if you're lucky. And so when you're producing in sedimentary phosphates, you're really producing for the fertilizer world because, again, a good portion of that, a large majority has to end up in fertilizer, and only a small portion can go to the purified phosphoric acid. But when you're producing with igneous phosphate rock, like our igneous phosphate rock, we have a conversion ratio, believe it or not, of 91.1% into purified phosphoric acid. So we're basically producing for the high technology industry, and we don't have to be beholden at all to the fertilizer world.
Well, LFP batteries, the main demand driver for phosphate and for this purified phosphoric acid, and these appear to be the dominant player in the battery game right now. Lithium iron phosphate batteries, around 81% of Chinese EV battery installations in April of this year use LFP batteries. Now a whopping 95% of new utility scale battery contracts and project selections globally also LFP. Now people talk about, Samsung's making a silver battery. What about sodium ion batteries? Now these are interesting concepts, but the stats say LFP is king. Do you expect LFP battery market share to remain this dominant moving forward?
Yes, I mean, Jesse, LFP batteries were about 30 to 40% of battery chemistries 3-4 years ago. Now, like you said, they're approaching 70, 80% and going even higher and growing, and everyone's moving into LFP. The real big dominant factor with LFP, believe it or not, is the fact that it's very versatile. Everybody always wants to talk about EVs, but if you look at the EV component, it's only 14% of the LFP battery component. Other components of LFP battery are things like energy storage, data centers, small mobility, telecom, even EV charging stations are on LFP batteries. So the EV battery is very versatile. It really gets into every single aspect of where you can find a battery. So this is what's really propelling it, and it's got superior fire safety. It's the lowest cost battery on the market, and it seems to have very long cycle life as well.
And what are you watching right now when it comes to the LFP battery market? What are the major catalyst trends that you see driving that sector forward? And then by proxy, of course, driving demand for the type of purified phosphoric acid that you're extracting at First Phosphate?
Well, LFP battery, the growth is just incredible. I mean, if you look at China, it's growing at somewhere between I've heard estimates anywhere from 25 to 30 up to 60% quarter over quarter. And that's just driving a tremendous amount of LFP cathode active material and LFP LFP CAM and phosphate that's required for it. Just to give you an example, in the cathode of an LFP battery, it's only 4% lithium, about 35% iron, but it's 61% phosphate. So every time you have an incremental increase in the amount of LFP required, you've got only a 4% bump in lithium, but you've got a 61% bump in phosphate. So the amount of phosphate being required for these batteries is almost 1-to-1. The amount of phosphoric acid required is almost 1-to-1 to the amount of LFP CAM requirement. So it's just growing leaps and bounds right now.
Now, China accounts for roughly 44% of global phosphate production. The Asia Pacific region as a whole held about 56% of global phosphoric acid market volume share in 2025. How important is it to bring phosphate and phosphoric acid production online in North America, especially given the geopolitical uncertainties facing the world today?
Yes, well, there already is a lot of purified phosphoric acid production in the West. One thing to note is that it's all being used in traditional uses. So it's being used in things like, carbonated beverages. For instance, you'll find it in Coca-Cola. You'll find it in toothpaste. You'll find it in cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, water treatment, food and beverage industry. And you'll also find it in industrial uses like paints, and also in fire extinguishing. So there is a lot of traditional use already for purified phosphoric acid in the West, but we haven't even started to scratch the surface of that requirement once LFP hits. All of the LFP batteries right now, for the most part, 99%, if you will, are being made in China. So we're trying to onshore that LFP battery technology for one simple reason. From China not only comes the cathode active material and the battery, but also the battery pack and the actual finished product. So when you buy an EV, the battery inside of there is LFP, but you're being sold the whole end product. Same thing with a stationary energy storage system, or a small scooter or bicycle. The battery comes with a unit. So it's really important for the Western world to onshore these processes to make these batteries, so that we can also onshore the whole, downstream value added that comes along with them. So the amount of purified phosphoric acid that's going to be required to onshore these LFP batteries and these products running LFP is nothing short of, astounding.
Well, let's talk about how First Phosphate fits into the picture, because you're mine to market. Walk us through that process from extracting phosphate and from bringing to market LFP batteries. Where are you right now in that entire supply chain process, and what's the long-term goal? Any details you could share with us on that would be great.
Yeah, so these batteries that you see right in front of you here, this is an LFP 18650 cell. This was made using our phosphate from the Bégin-Lamarche property, and it was actually made using full North American critical minerals for the anode and the cathode of the battery. It's the first time that it's been done in 25 years since the technology was first invented in North America, and then obviously was overtaken in China. So basically, where are we at? Well, right now we're at our mining project, where we're at the start of building the mine. So right now we've got to finish our feasibility study. Once the feasibility study is complete, we've got to get our permits, and then we've got to move into building the mine, and that will yield the phosphate rock that then yields a phosphate concentrate, which then yields the phosphoric acid, the LFP CAM, and then the LFP CAM goes into the cathode of this battery. Obviously, you require other things like in the anode, which we have in here is graphite as well. We have graphite from Nouveau Monde graphite. So it's quite a complex process to make the battery, but the LFP cathode active material is seen as one of the more important elements to be able to onshore, to be able to have independence in being able to manufacture our own batteries.
Well, there's big news coming out of the company recently, because you listed on the NASDAQ. You recently rang the NASDAQ bell to celebrate. The ticker is PHOS. How significant is this listing for the company and the access it gives you to a huge network of new potential shareholders?
Oh, it's really massive. I mean, we had topped out. There was a lot of institutions that just could not participate in the equity of the company, because we were listed only on the OTCQX, which was the highest order of the QX exchange, but they really needed us to be on a major exchange, whether New York or NASDAQ. Now that we're on NASDAQ, it's a perfect fit for us, because we're from mine to market. So there's a very large technology component, if not a major technology component in this company as well. So NASDAQ is the most fitting exchange for us, and NASDAQ and the convergence between critical minerals, the supply chains, and the technology, and us going from mine to market, NASDAQ's a perfect venue for us. So it's really opened the doors to a lot of funds and larger investors that could not own us to being able to own us. In fact, since we listed on the NASDAQ, there's already been, a massive swell in the trading of our shares across all the exchanges. We've experienced probably in the last 3 days, record trading volumes that we've never seen in the life of the company. So the liquidity has just been massively improved. It's just an incredible phenomenon to watch, where all the funds that were willing to own us but couldn't now have the ability to do it.
That's fantastic. And more great news. Quebec's Ministry of Natural Resources and Forests selected the Bégin-Lamarche project for fast track status in July 2026. What advantages does this expedited permitting pathway provide, and how much could it shorten the timeline to production?
Yeah, it's a really big one for us, actually, Jesse. It's one of the most major ones on an operational level. So what does it mean? Our permits go through the Quebec government, and there can be, sometimes up to 3, 4, 5 different ministries that you have to go through for different permits, or different aspects of the permit, or different aspects of the permitting process. So what this does is it brings all of these ministries to the table, and there's just one central input spot that we dialogue with the government. So when we dialogue with the government, and it's already started, we dialogue with members of the 3 or 4 different ministries involved at the table at the same time. We produce one report for all 2 or 3 different uses, and it's meant to streamline. It's meant to have no red tape, no double dipping, if you will, or double replication of information. And it's meant to make projects go much more smoothly, and it's meant to really pinpoint on those projects that Quebec is really interested in advancing. There were 3 projects put under this status. We were one of the 3, which is great. So it means that we have really the eyes and ears of basically the whole administration and the whole political process in getting this project moved forward. So it's been a great one for us. Fast tracking.
Yeah, sounds like a game changer. In June of this year as well, you announced that you have formalized international investment and offtake agreements under the Critical Minerals Resilience and Production Alliance, and this was at the 52nd G7 Summit. Can you unpack the details of these offtake agreements and what they mean for the company moving forward?
Sure. So basically, to just step back a little bit, so we had very good support at the municipal level, even with our Indigenous groups, local communities, at the Quebec provincial level, and even at the Canadian level. As you know, we've received $21.5 million of contribution from the federal government. And now, when all that came into place, the G7 has been looking for companies to position itself to be able to resolve supply chain issues that they have. So the G7 came out in June of this year and said, there's a number of supply chains that are fairly controlled by one country in particular. They never mentioned any names. And they said, we would like by 2030 for there to be no supply chains that we are critically dependent on, where more than 60% of the supply chain is focused in any one country. So as we know, with LFP, it's over 98% focused in Asia, mostly in China. So their question is, how do we decouple from that? So they looked at First Phosphate as one of the means, or one of the companies in the Western world, to be able to do that with a deposit and the whole mine-to-market strategy working in North America. So what they've done is a number of the nation states came forward. One major off-taker came forward as well. And so at the G7 G7 Summit and the G7 Critical Minerals Alliance, basically we were given letters of interest and letters of guarantee from the Danish government and from entities of the Italian government to be able to advance the mine and also the phosphoric acid plant, which represents the second transformation, the phosphoric acid, which then goes into making the LFP cathode active material. So the off-taker took 200,000 tons of phosphate concentrate from the Bégin-Lamarche mine and 60,000 tons of phosphoric acid from the phosphoric acid plant at Port of Saguenay.
Excellent. Now, I want to talk about catalysts for the company coming up in a moment. But first, I just wanted to ask you, based on the conversations you're having with investors, both institutional and retail, around First Phosphate, are you seeing an increased knowledge base when it comes to the commodity sector, when it comes to understanding the critical importance of phosphate? Because as we know, commodities in general very underinvested in for a while now. Some are talking about a commodity super cycle coming up. I'm just wondering, based on your conversations, are you seeing increased investor awareness in the importance of critical minerals like phosphate?
Yes, for sure. And our NASDAQ listing really points it out, and the great reception that we've had since we've been listed on NASDAQ. I mean, we have opened up the category of igneous phosphate, if you will, as an asset class. Everyone is scrambling to these, what I call, exotic rare earths, things like iridium, antimony, tantalum, tungsten, gallium. I could just keep going down the list. And igneous phosphate is another one of these really rare commodities that has a really, really big impact on the technological world and the future output in the new economy. So we've been sort of, embraced on that basis. And it's very nice to see the amount of volume that's occurring now in our securities now that we're listed on NASDAQ. So yes, we see ourselves as another subsector of the rare earths, if you will, or of the rare commodities.
Catalysts for the company. What are the main upcoming catalysts, news flow that's going to be coming out of First Phosphate that shareholders of the company can look forward to?
Well, as you can see, there's always surprises along the way, but what we communicate and what we can communicate directly to the markets is the next major milestone for the company is the feasibility study. The feasibility study we're hoping to have completed by the first quarter of 2027. And then after that, it's permitting. And then after that, it's a final investment decision for which, as you know, as we spoke before, we already have major sovereigns at the table, nation states at the table. And after that, we're hoping to get the mine up and running, open pit mine, 2029, 2030 at the latest.
And is there anything we haven't yet touched on or anything you think it's important to emphasize when it comes to First Phosphate and the value proposition it currently presents to investors?
Well, Jesse, I always say to everybody, it's LFP, right? So it's lithium iron phosphate. We know where we can get the lithium. Lithium's 4% of the cathode. There's over 150 publicly traded companies on stock exchanges worldwide. If you want lithium exposure, iron is fairly standard, though it is rare in its powder format, which is required for LFP. But P, the phosphate, 61% of the cathode of the LFP battery is something that we have not given much thought to. And First Phosphate is out there. We're the only company, as far as we know, that's fully 100% dedicated to phosphate, high purity igneous phosphate for the LFP battery industry.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the description below to the First Phosphate website, as well as social media for people who can follow along with the company. And of course, now listed on NASDAQ under PHOS. John, always enjoy our conversations. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jesse. Great to be here.
Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.